In this video, we're going to show you to replace the rear wheel hub on your Nissan Rogue all-wheel drive, located right here on the backside of your vehicle. Let's go ahead and remove that center cap. Just put your fingers behind the cap here and gently tug outward. Using a 21mm socket, loosen and remove the lug nuts. Grab the wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Using a 14mm socket and ratchet, loosen and remove the caliper bolts. When we remove our pins here, the upper pin has this little piece on here, a little sleeve. I want to make sure that goes back in the top. I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver, or you can use a small pry bar. I'm going to go in here and just gently put some sideward pressure on here, and this is going to compress that piston just a little bit on our caliper. This is going to allow us to go ahead and slide this off. I'm going to use a tool here to go ahead and support and hang this caliper up and out of the way. Good, remove your brake pads. And when you remove your brake pads here, take note that the inboard pad has the squeak tab on the inside. We're going to use a 17mm wrench to go ahead and loosen these caliper bracket bolts. Ours is pretty rusty, so just going to get that wrench on there and go ahead, break that free. And do the same for the top. Go ahead and remove that bolt and remove that caliper bracket, set that aside. Use an 18mm wrench on the bolt side of the lower portion of the shock. Use an 18mm socket on the nut side, loosen and remove this. Then we're going to go ahead and put our jack underneath the knuckle area here. This will give us a little more room to move our shock and get to the bolt on the back side of the wheel hub. And on the back side of our wheel hub, there's 4 17mm bolts. There's 2 up top, 2 on the bottom. We're going to use a 17mm swivel head with extension on our impact. Let's go ahead, loosen and remove those. When you use our cutters here, you can use a pair of standard pliers. I'm going to open up this cotter pin. Now a cotter pin will normally have two of these little legs here, but the other leg was snipped off, and that's standard practice once they're installed. I'm going to go ahead and walk that cotter pin out. Cotter pins are a one-time use, so discard that. Using your 30mm socket, we're going to loosen and remove this axle nut. Now we want to make sure that our axle is free from our wheel hub. We can't push on it, so I'm going to go ahead and use my mallet. Just give that a few bonks. You don't want to use a metal hammer. You'll damage the threads and you'll never get that nut back on. So use a rubber mallet. You can see that our axle now is moving freely in and out of that wheel hub. Now at this point here, I did put on our axle nut, just a few threads. Our whole hub holds the e-brake, backing plate and all that to the knuckle itself. So you can see the whole thing wobbling around. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my air hammer. I'm going to hold the backing here, and you can work your way around, separating the wheel hub from the axle. Now, worst case scenario, if you cannot separate the wheel hub from the backing plate, you'll have to remove the entire unit here by disconnecting your ABS sensor and your e-brake assembly. Pull this off as an assembly and separate this on the bench. I'm going to go ahead and apply a thin coat of grease around the perimeter here. I'm going to add some grease to the inner splines for the CV axle to slide into. I'm going to go ahead and throw the axle nut on here just to hold everything in place. Now at this point here, we went ahead and cleaned up our bolts on our wire wheel machine and put a little bit of grease on these here. We're going to start putting these in through the back. Going to line up the ABS flange on the back, through the knuckle, through the backing plate, and into our hub. Now what you can do is take a long screwdriver just to kind of get things lined up. Go through the back, backing plate, and out into the front side of the hub area. With that lined up, that should give us a preliminary setting to go ahead and get one of the other bolts lined up. Good, remove the screwdriver and continue for the other three. Just gonna rock the backing plate and the hub around a little bit. I'm not gonna tighten it down, just wanna get that in quite a bit there. Now that we have all 4 bolts installed, let's go ahead and tighten those down. Let's go ahead and torque these bolts down to 88 foot-pounds. With all 4 of these bolts torqued down, we can now go ahead and tighten down that axle nut. Let's go ahead and install our shock here. Going to line this up. Use our jack to go ahead and lift up that rear control arm. Get that lined up, put our bolt in. Pop that through, put the nut on. Let's go ahead and tighten down that bolt. At this point here, we can go ahead and lower our jack and remove that. Let's go ahead and tighten this down to 120 foot-pounds. Go slide that on. Go ahead and take the bracket. Let's go ahead and line that up. I want to go ahead and get both of these bolts started by hand. Then we can go ahead and snug them down. Take your inboard pad that has the squeak tab on it. Line that up and set that in. Then we'll install the outboard pad the same way. Go ahead and grab that caliper. Go ahead and line this up. Slide this into place. Now we simply went ahead and took our pin here. The upper pin has that little insulator on it. I'm going to slide that in through the top, through the boot, and into the caliper bracket. Install the lower pin. Once those are in, go ahead and snug them down. Now I'm just going to use my wrench. Snug that down. Torque the caliper bracket to 62 foot-pounds. tighten down these slide pins to 25 foot-pounds. Now at this point here, you want to go ahead and hop into the vehicle, pump up the brakes. That'll expand the piston and give you some brake tension here on the caliper. I'm going to go ahead and thread on a couple nuts here. And go ahead and rotate this around. I'm going to go ahead and use my pry bar here. This is going to work as a stop. Next, let's go ahead and torque down that axle nut to 125 foot-pounds. Go ahead and remove the lug nuts. Now, if your brake rotor came with a rubber plug here, go ahead and pop it out of the original rotor. You can now press that into this port. Ours didn't have it, so ours is now empty. Take your new cotter pin, feed that through. I'm going to go ahead and grab one of those ends here. Simply want to bend that over. Go ahead and take the other side, snip it off. Once that's all set, you can now go ahead and install your wheel. Go ahead and grab that wheel, line that up, slide that into place. Let's go ahead and get all of our lug nuts started by hand. Once these are all on, we'll go ahead and snug them down. Go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. Once you have these torqued down, I'm going to go ahead and install your wheel cap. I want to pay attention to the notch right here. That is where your valve stem is going to go. You're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.